Welcome to this edition of the program. I'm John Locke. Here in Bridgewater, the numbers regarding the spread of COVID-19 have been relatively low with single-digit active case totals throughout the summer. The state, however, has moved the town to a yellow category, meaning that there were between 4 and 8 active cases per 100,000 people over a 14-day period. As of September 28th, Bridgewater joined dozens of other communities here in the Bay State, and the town reported on that day that there were 10 active cases among residents. And there was some added concern when the library was closed on September 25th after 2 employees reported symptoms that could be related to COVID-19. As the 2 employees await the results out of an abundance of safety, the library was closed for sanitizing and disinfecting for a week. Town Manager Michael Dutton said that this was just a precautionary measure taken after careful consideration. The doors to the Academy building have been shut to the public throughout most of this pandemic, but they may open soon. At the last town council meeting, the town manager told the council that the town is attempting to move toward an appointment model for residents that need to get inside the building. The hope would be for this to start around October 5th, and Mr. Dutton added that if things go well from a health and safety standpoint, the building could be open for walk-in service about 2 weeks after. During the time that the doors were closed to the public, employees have been working in the Academy building and remotely. This is something that the town manager has been proud of, as the town hasn't had to shut down during the pandemic.
I will point out, and somebody pointed this out today, I think there is a perception out there that nobody, that nobody's working when they're not in the building. And I can tell you that actually that's contrary to that notion. And I've said it before, I'm quite proud of our group of administrative employees. They've been extremely diligent about making sure that the job gets done, no matter what the hurdles in front of them. So they have been working quite hard. In fact, we really are one of the very few towns that never closed our operations due to COVID.
And a reminder, you can watch town council meetings over on Channel 22 or on demand anytime at btvaccess.com. At the last school committee meeting, the results from the last survey sent to parents were announced regarding all virtual learning, transportation, and Chromebook needs. Out of the just over 4,400 surveys returned, 64% were from Bridgewater and 36% from Rainham. Just under 84% of the survey takers wanted their child in hybrid learning, with the rest wanting all remote learning. As of September 9th, that would be 763 students learning remotely to start the school year. On the transportation front, just under half of those surveyed said their child would be taking advantage of transportation to school, 31% said they would opt out, and 20% said they weren't eligible for transportation. 1,300 Chromebooks have been requested by parents and guardians. The district already has 1,200 with another 100 on order. The district says there will be a request list made for any others who may need a Chromebook for their child to learn virtually. Teachers and staff have been in professional development, which includes a safe return to school plan geared toward using social distancing and masks in the classroom. The assistant superintendent of the district, Ryan Powers, said this will be a school year that may see changes on the fly and asked for patience and flexibility.
So, we are confident, but we also have the understanding that we may need to make changes as things come up. And, we'll certainly continue to gather feedback from our stakeholders, whether it be our students, our staff, our family, just in terms of how our hybrid model is working, or how our remote model is working for our students that have, chosen that model as their primary educational experience for the fall. And so we're eager to get going. We really are, as much as we, are a little anxious because we're not 100% sure how this is going to work. We are eager. We want to get kids back in the building. That's what we're all about at the end of the day.
Also during the meeting, BR Athletic Director Dan Bjorn talked to the school committee about what athletics may look like in the fall. You may remember that fall sports deemed high risk of transmitting COVID-19 have been pushed to a floating schedule in February. Other sports, including boys and girls cross country and boys and girls soccer, along with golf, field hockey, and volleyball, are expected to take place in the fall. BR is planning to start practicing in those sports coming up on September 21st. BR also added that there would be different districts to help cut down on long travel. BR is in District 8 and will be competing with Brockton, Dartmouth, Durfee, New Bedford, and West Bridgewater, who had their league push all sports to that floating schedule we talked about earlier. We should expect to see a 10-game schedule with perhaps one non-league opponent, and the teams would compete in a district playoff instead of the state championship. Other items of note from the presentation include teams having only 90 minutes to practice, games taking place on Monday through Friday, All BR teams playing in the fall sports schedule besides volleyball will play their games on the turf field with no fans being admitted inside the fences at the high school. There is hope that some family members will be allowed inside the field for senior night. The AD also added that all head coaches at the high school will need to take a COVID-19 course. Also, student athletes won't use the locker rooms in the high school, instead coming to games and leaving fully prepared. We should start to learn some recommendations from the MIAA about winter sports sometime next month. As the high school opened its doors for a unique school year, there was an early scare after a student had tested positive for COVID-19 right before the start of hybrid learning. According to the Bridgewater Independent, there was one student at the high school and there was another Bridgewater student that tested positive at a private high school. The two cases were confirmed by the Bridgewater Board of Health. The superintendent of the BR School District, Derek Swenson, sent a letter to parents about the positive tests and said that the tests were identified before the start of the school year and students who may have been in close contact have been identified and placed under quarantine. Right now, that number of students is reported to be around 15. Mr. Swenson in that letter said, "We must remain cognizant that these situations may occur throughout the duration of the school year. I share this information with you not to incite worry or concern, but rather out of transparency." And 2 weeks after those initial positive tests, the district announced that 15 students tested positive for COVID-19. Mr. Swenson posted on the BR School District's Facebook page that the cases have been a result of social gatherings outside of the schools. With case totals this high in the district, students may go all remote learning after a school committee meeting that will take place after this recording of the program. I did ask Mr. Swenson back in August at what point students would transition to a full remote model.
Is that Governor Baker came out with a matrix now that allows us to follow trends within our communities and throughout the Commonwealth. And basically, it's kind of a stoplight type measure. You have your green where you're good, you have your yellow where you got to take some caution, and you got to have the red where, you know, at that point you should consider being and going totally remote. And that's all based upon the data that we receive through our local health agents, both in Bridgewater and Rainham.
And at the time this interview was recorded, the district was in the white level, but since has approached the red level. Again, full remote learning is a possibility with the school committee meeting after this program is recorded, but we will have any new information coming up on the update. 4 off-campus parties are being investigated by Bridgewater State University that took place over Labor Day weekend. This was first reported by the Brockton Enterprise, who obtained an email that said the parties took place on Hale, Broad, and Plymouth Streets. University spokesperson Ava Gaffney said that nobody was wearing masks at the time and physical distancing guidelines were not being used. There has been administrative action taken against 3 residential students, including suspension. Denise Rocco, who is BSU's Associate Vice President and Dean of Students, wrote a strongly worded letter that reads in part, "Each of you who hosted or attended a large indoor gathering made the choice to risk jeopardizing our entire campus and local community." In a move that shouldn't surprise many, the MassCat Conference, which Bridgewater State University is a part of, decided to suspend winter sports until at least the second semester, which is around the start of 2021. The conference suspended fall sports with a potential of playing games in the spring. However, winter sports will be able to hold practices and train on campus. The high school and college football teams here in Bridgewater aren't playing during the fall, but BTV has some of the classics from the past 10 plus years, including crazy comebacks, wins against number 1 teams, and some of the biggest moments at BSU and BR. On Channel 9 every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday nights, check out BR and BSU Classics at 8:30 p.m. And we have other stories to bring you after the break, including Bridgewater police officer saving a man's life in a dangerous situation. Plus, the general election is about 1 month away, but early voting is back at the Academy building. We'll tell you when to vote and some of the safety measures that are being taken.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. opening that education savings account when she was little, spearheading a campus tour, and another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? And now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Numerous Bridgewater police officers are being commended for saving a man's life in a potentially dangerous situation. On August 23rd, the police station received multiple abandoned 911 phone calls from a man who said he wanted to kill someone. Officers Christopher Rondeau and James Doherty were the first officers to arrive to the Center Street home of a 69-year-old man from Bridgewater. When arriving to the door, the man who called the police station had 2 knives in one hand and a third knife in his other hand. Officers Gino Sergio, Nicholas Mantalos, Clint Apaza, and K-9 officer Stephen Kingsley responded to the house as this was all taking place. During the ordeal, the man told officers that he wanted them to shoot him, quickly turning this into a serious mental health situation. The man, after dropping 2 of the knives, threatened to use the third knife on himself, and at that point, one of the officers deployed a taser. The man injured his shoulder when he fell to the ground, but he underwent a mental health evaluation and he was later transported to a hospital. No charges have been filed, and Police Chief Chris Del Monte released a statement saying, quote, "This was a prime example of professional police officers using their training to resolve a serious and potentially tragic situation. The officers relied on their training, exercised good judgment, worked as a team, took decisive action early, and followed established protocols for dealing with persons in a mental health crisis. This man was capable of hurting many people, including himself and responding officers. When we put our uniforms on every day, we never know what the day may bring, and that includes a human being in the midst of a mental health crisis, rushing out of his home with knives in each hand, charging toward our officers. Thanks to their professionalism, this man is still alive today and is getting help." The month of September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, but mental health is a concern year-round, and there are ways to reach out for help if you need someone to talk to, including calling the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-TALK. That number again is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text NAMI to 741-741. Shifting our attention to politics, and at the beginning of the month, residents in town and across the state went to the polls to vote in the primary. Here's how Bridgewater voted on the key contested races. Ed Markey won the Democratic candidacy for his seat, but here in Bridgewater, it was Joe Kennedy earning a majority of the votes. The town followed the trend of the state, voting for Kevin O'Connor on the Republican side. They will face each other in the general election coming up in November. Stephen Lynch beat Robbie Goldstein with a Bridgewater tally of 2696 to 1209. We go from the primary to the general election, which is coming up on November 3rd at the middle school, and just like with the previous presidential election in 2016, Bridgewater residents have the option to vote early at the Academy building. These are the hours starting with October 17th and 18th, with both days having polling hours of 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturday, October 24th is the last day to register to vote here in Bridgewater, and you can see that the polls will be open that day from 2 to 8. The final day of early voting is on Friday, October 30th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. With the pandemic, things will be a little different than 4 years ago. The early voting will take place at the Academy building in the council chambers. You must wear a mask when entering the building, and there will be hand sanitizer available to use. If you need to use the elevator to get to the second floor of the building, there is a maximum occupancy of 1 unless you have a family member with you. You must enter through the front door, and after you cast your vote, you must exit the council chambers and go to the right down the staircase, taking you out to the Bedford Street side of the building. Again, if you're using the elevator, only 1 person is allowed in at a time besides a family member. And we will keep sharing this information with you on the update throughout the month of October. Precinct 5 here in town is expected to see a new town councilor. Bridgewater held its annual town election in June, and the Precinct 5 seat was won by Peter Columbotus, who maxed out his service time earlier this year and was ineligible to hold on to the seat. There were 4 write-in votes, but according to the town council attorney, none of them could be named as a councilor as they would need 30% of the votes, but all the write-ins actually had 20%. During the councilor comments at the end of the September 8th meeting, Councilor Bill Wood had some concern that there was an effort to find someone to replace Colin Bodas when nobody stepped up to challenge him.
But I think we're at a low point on our election cycles here. It's not like the election was a surprise. The election cycle was 6 months long almost. I was being bashed on Facebook every opportunity. So the fact that we were going to have an election should not have surprised anyone. Yet during the nomination season, no one took out papers for 5. During the write-in process, no one made an attempt to do a write-in. Somebody could have stepped up, and I'm not criticizing them. What I'm saying is that maybe everybody was comfortable with Pete being their representative for District 5 in their neighborhood. And so it troubles me that we're going to this huge effort to replace a guy that no one wanted to replace, and no one has complained that needs to be replaced.
Wood added that there needs to be an effort to notify people of elections and opportunities to help out their community. And the town is expected to have a candidate for the vacancy at a meeting coming up in October. Turning to your health, and as this pandemic continues with no real end in sight, it can be difficult to maintain safe habits that feel confining, including wearing masks and socially distancing ourselves. And although it may not be easy, we have to find it in ourselves to make sure COVID safety measures don't slip.
I call it willingness to do uncomfortable things because we value them and deem them worthwhile, and they protect ourselves and those that we care about.
Doctors say that it's natural over time to let our guard down against the threat of the virus, but it's important to remember that if you take a break from the safety measures, the virus won't. One suggestion is to create habits that have safety routines, and it could help us maintain them without thinking about it. Sometimes when we get fatigued, we want to rest. However, the more rest we get, the more fatigued we become, so the recommendation is for new actions or activities to help us get back on track.
Finding a new mask, something that excites you, a new social distancing activity, finding something novel and new is a way we excite our brains, and it's a way we can overcome fatigue.
During the month of September, a number of wildfires out west in California and Oregon destroyed over 300,000 acres and put countless lives in danger. Now, while the situation is dangerous out west here in New England, and more specifically here in Bridgewater, there were some impacts as well. Jeff Fowler has more on those.
2020 has certainly made some headlines, including a very active season for wildfires in the U.S., particularly on the West Coast. Severe thunderstorms ignited numerous fires in California, Oregon, and Washington state as an abnormally dry and warm air mass allowed smoke plumes to carry across most of our nation. These smoke resulted in brilliant sunsets as far east as New England, but were also accommodated with air quality issues. While the West was burning, the East Coast, particularly southern New England, has been parched by an extreme drought. The Bridgewater area saw annual precip deficits approaching 10 inches by late September. There was some much-needed rainfall on the horizon, but forecasters are warning of a potentially dry and warm second half of October, which could enhance fire dangers across the country. Reporting for Bridgewater Review, this is Jeff Fowler.
This year marked the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower arriving at Plymouth Rock. Author Rick Ponce wrote a book that was more than a decade in the works, which has that moment take a mysterious turn. Rick talked to Mary Evers in September about this book, which is a mix of historic reality and fictional mystery.
Mr. Ponce, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we're here to talk about your recently published book, 103 Pilgrims, which was published back in March of this year, back when the world was completely different. And as we get close to celebrating the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims arriving in Plymouth in Massachusetts, we wanted to discuss your book. So let's start with, what was your inspiration to start writing this book?
Well, actually, I started writing the book about 12 years ago, and it took me that long. I'm working on the sequel. Hopefully, it will not take me quite as long on the sequel as it did this book. I actually started writing it when I did a lot of traveling, both throughout the United States and in Europe. So on those long flights or those flight delays, I started writing some of the stories that people told me about the area when I lived there. I lived in Plymouth for 25 years, and I had 3 sons that were born there, and they all live in the Plymouth area. 2 of the sons were born in Jordan Hospital, which I believe is now Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital.
Yep.
And their 2 wives work as nurses in that hospital.
Oh, wow.
So we're kind of embedded. And while I was there, I just thought there were a lot of the culture was very interesting, and a lot of stories I heard were very interesting.
So the book takes place modern day, but stretches back to things that happened in 1620. Was it always your intention to get into the deep history of Plymouth itself, or did that kind of come to you as you were writing these stories down?
Actually, both. I actually came up with the idea, like I said, about 12 years ago. And I said, and without a spoiler alert, I said, what would have happened if they discovered that there was a stowaway on board the Mayflower? And taking that premise, well, why don't we know about it today? Why were people trying to cover that up if that really did happen? And then that's how I started writing the story.
So the book is also a mystery, obviously. So your main characters will be trying to figure out who the stowaway was and what the mystery behind it was. And this story, you say it was promoted to me that this was going to be a series of books. So I assume that your sequel is it a different mystery completely, or is it going to be a continuation of what they're talking about in the first book?
Well, the book continues on with the next time. So it takes place about a year after the 103 Pilgrims took place. And it's called Blood on the Rock. And it takes place in Plymouth again, around the streets and the alleys and the back roads of Plymouth and Cape Cod area.
Awesome. Obviously, Massachusetts has a very rich history, especially when it comes to the founding of this country and the Pilgrims being some of the first group of people over here. Being from around the area, that history must be something that you were it was ingrained in you for a very long time. So it must be very important to you, as it is to a lot of people in Massachusetts. So I think that you doing this book is going to interest a lot of people, because not only is it a mystery and going to be a lot of things that may not have been discussed about this history before, but it's also fun to read about something that happens in your hometown. So that must have been great for you to write about that.
Actually, I had an awful lot of fun not only writing it, but during the research. Right. I found that the history that was written 100 years ago is different today than it was 100 years ago, because they discovered new things. Right. They discovered new articles and a background on different people. So I found that the most interesting part is how rich the culture is and the history is of that area, and how it can kind of blend in with today, but still affects today's life.
So for those of our viewers that are interested in reading your book, where can they find it to purchase?
They can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle. The audio version will be out in about 2 weeks. Awesome. On Audible, so you can find it on Audible. I found a great actress to do the Audible part of the book, and it really turned out quite well. So.
That's great. Well, thank you, Mr. Pons, for your time, and hopefully that our viewers will go and read this book. I'm very interested in reading it myself, and we'll be starting it as soon as it arrives, because I did order it on Amazon.
It should be there soon.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
It does sound like a great read, and for more information on the book or to purchase the book, you can visit 103pilgrims.com. And when we come back, Halloween is a bit different this year, but we have ways you can take part in the fun, including a contest here on BTV, where the winner will receive a sweet prize.
Your voice, your vote. In our democracy, they matter. Make yours count. Get registered, learn the issues, and vote by or on November 3rd. Visit vote411.org. This message is furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary.
Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Things may be different in 2020, but some traditions live on, and that includes decorating your house for Halloween. A fundraiser was started by the Bridgewater 4th of July Committee to find the best decorated house. It costs $10 to enter, and decorations should be up and ready to view by October 25th. To pay the $10 entry fee, visit bridgewaterma4th.com and the fee will be near the top of the page. After that, send your address over to buzzcurl@comcast.net. We have started a contest here at BTV for the best decorated pumpkin. The contest will run through October 27th, and all family-friendly entries will end up on the Halloween edition of the update. One winner will be selected and will receive a gift certificate to Skinner's Sugar House located at 24 Union Street in East Bridgewater. Send your entry to jluck@btvaccess.com with the subject line Pumpkin Contest. And finally, we've shown you videos in the past of teachers and principals using music to welcome kids back to school. We've even seen it here locally at the BR School District with a superintendent and assistant superintendent. In Wisconsin, a teacher had a message for students who were learning remotely and had the help of a popular 90s television show.
Even though we're starting virtual, we can still have a great year, 'cause I'll be here for you when you're learning at home.
Paul Miller is an English teacher in Appleton, Wisconsin, and if you couldn't tell, made a back-to-school song to the theme from Friends. The song is about virtual learning and how he, along with the school, will always be there for the kids. Mr. Miller usually plays a back-to-school song in the classroom on his ukulele. A couple of years ago, he made a back-to-school cover of Imagine Dragons' It's Time. The teacher said it took a day to write the lyrics and another 2 days to record the song and film inside the school. Mr. Miller's song has been viewed on YouTube more than 27,000 times, and I have still yet to see one episode of Friends, but another story for another time. Thanks for watching this edition of the Bridgewater Review. I'm John Locke.